Great pleasure. Let me now call upon Mr. David Turvold to take the seat as the moderator, and also the distinguished speakers, Mrs. Siji Song, Team Leader for Global Maritime Crime Program, South Asia Team, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, as well as Mr. Martin Kaushi Inglot, Project Director, Cremario 2 Team, to carry on with the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor today to lead panel number 4, and I'm joined by two distinguished speakers who are going to enlighten us on the subject of maritime domain awareness. Maritime domain awareness is about acquiring knowledge of the sea because knowledge is power. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, and in about 3 minutes I'm going to talk a little bit before I turn it over to our speakers. MDA is not a static thing or a static act, but it's a process. It's a process that starts with the question why. Why do we want to invest in doing maritime security? And I think the most primary answer is that it is in the state's interest and it is in the interest of the international community because it improves our security, it improves our safety, it protects resources, it develops our economy, especially the blue economy that you've heard so much about. And so the process involves a few steps. First, it involves gathering information, then analyzing it, then sharing the information, and then finally acting on the information. And in acting on the information is where we start to transform the information into knowledge and then finally into power. But MDA also requires investment. It's expensive. It takes time. You have to train crews. You have to buy ships and aircraft. It involves institutions. And so it shouldn't surprise you that our speakers today represent institutions, the UNODC and the European Union. And then finally, you have to build maritime fusion centers like the ones that have been mentioned so far today, both in India and Singapore, that serve the Indo-Pacific region. Our first panelist, Ms. Siji Song, is the program coordinator of the Indian Ocean East team at the UNODC. She is a lawyer in human rights. And then our second, Mr. Martin Kaushi Inglot, former head of the Malta Navy, is the program director at Cremario 2, which is a European Union effort at maritime domain awareness. It shouldn't surprise you that our two panelists are representing both law and technology, two primary facets that make up maritime domain awareness. So with that, I'd like to ask Siji, Ms. Song, if you'd go to the microphone, if we could bring up Ms. Song's presentation, please. And she's going to talk to us about the basics of maritime domain awareness and some of the law aspects of maritime domain awareness. Siji, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and then we're still in the morning. Good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for the Sri Lanka Navy and the Galle Dialogue Secretariat for inviting UNODC Global Maritime Crime Program. So my name is Siji Song, as was introduced, and then I will talk about the maritime domain awareness on the MDA. And I think it's great that from the previous discussion, there were points that was raised related to the AIS and how we should monitor those ships that turned out the AIS. So. Yeah, so hopefully my presentation, but also following presentation from Martin, will provide some guideline and then solutions to that. Before I start, I would like to briefly explain about the UNODC Global Maritime Crime Program for those who haven't heard about our organization. So the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the Global Maritime Crime Program, was established in 2010 in response to the UN Security Council resolutions calling for the concerted international response to address the piracy of the Horn of Africa. Since then, the program has now expanded, both thematically and then geographically, covering much wider spectrum of maritime crime within 6 oceans, spaces, globally, and having established its program in a total of 61 member states. And so what you see on the top is basically our mission. We do support the member states in strengthening the capacities to prevent and combat the crimes at sea through the support of the entire criminal justice chain. So this would include starting from prevention, deterrence, detection, interdiction, investigation, prosecution, and finally detention of those individuals involved in crimes at sea. And lastly, of course, on the regional law enforcement and the regional judicial cooperation, as maritime crime is a transnational nature. In this presentation, we will focus on detection as we talk about the MDA as well as the regional cooperation side. At sea, there are the various threats to the, first on the security, so like such as piracy, maritime terrorism, but as well as on the safety, as we saw from the previous session, those migrants smuggled by sea using the unseaworthy vessels, but also drugs smuggled into the countries are the safety issues. We do see regular seizures from the southern opioid trafficking route since 2018, and an increased use of drugs, especially those synthetic drugs. This is also threats to the economy, as we know the illegal fishing, such as the number of foreign fishing vessels in your country's EEZ. It will have a consequences, of course, as a depletion of the fish stock and food security impacting the local economy, as well as the environment, of course, threat to environment, such as the express per case for Sri Lanka, but also the Wakashio in case of Mauritius. So how could we better detect these security threats? Our ocean is vast, human resources are limited, deploying in other maritime and air assets associated with the fuel cost is very expensive. So how we could better detect these security threats? And this could be done so by the use of the MDA. So as our moderator mentioned, the MDA is to actually have the effective understanding of anything associated with the maritime domain that could impact the security, safety, economy, or environment. And then MDA enables maritime law enforcement authorities, not just the Navy and the Coast Guard, but the other law enforcement authorities as well, to make the informed decision to ensure safe and efficient maritime operations. So MDA in overall will help you in scoping the problem. If you see the left slide, these are what we know. So as you can see, those are the EZ from Bangladesh. There are 7 vessels that are visible at sea. So these are what we know from the passive detection, relying on the reception and interpretation of the existing signals, such as AIS. So it requires the compliance from the master, as we discussed also from the previous session. However, what we don't know is on the right side, these are the exactly same maritime zone from the picture, but utilizing the different MDA tools. And this picture has been taken, and where we can see more than 700 invisible vessels in that sea. And this was done through the active detection methods and then technologies, and we could receive and analyze the real-time data on those vessels that are not in compliance. And this is thanks to the use of the AI that analyze the large volume of the data to identify the patterns, anomalies, and threats in the maritime domain. There are multiple information centers, as we already mentioned in the last presentation, the IFC-IOR in India, the IFC in Singapore. We also do have in the Indian Ocean the RMIFC that is in Madagascar, the RCOC, which is more on the coordination of the operation in Seychelles. We also talked about the IFC in Sri Lanka. And this is all interconnected also up to the Gulf of Guinea, the Yaoundé architecture system. And then within this area of a responsibility, we could see what is normal and then what is not normal via the MDA tools. So it learns the pattern of the life of the vessel. It recognizes the patterns of the suspect behaviors. And this is AI technology detecting those suspicious behaviors. And then, of course, I also believe that Martin from Crimario will go more in details into this during the next session. But I believe the picture is a little bit too small. But in general, we can see the maritime traffic on the right side with the yellow and then orange color. But there is one little boat going through the river of the Bangladesh, which is identified as a blue. And this will be, so this is a system that is sending the information center potential suspicious behavior. And of course, then the analyst within the IFC will need to go through and then analyze, yes, this is indeed the suspicious behavior. So UNODC GMCP's overall approach to address to strengthen the maritime domain awareness. So the left side is all the data. These are all maritime domain awareness, the AIS, satellite imageries, the VMS for the fishing vessels, the radars, also the partners, as we mentioned, the different IFCs. So these are all the data which will be fused into the MDA integration system, where there are different platforms. And then this will provide the analysis through the machine learning technology, the AI, the algorithm, but of course from the person itself, operator's inputs, to identify and detect the illegal behavior of the ship. So the next slide is just the brief, the mechanism to explain how that would work. So for example, the AIS provides the position info, the suspect AIS data, where there is also a MDA tool called Skylight. Then Martin will go more in detail, which can provide a history of the dark rendezvous. And also we can work together, of course, with the international law enforcement agencies such as the Interpol watch list to identify the prior sanctions violators. CVision, which is another MDA tool, where you can see the port state ISPS, the frequency. And there is also a close coordination needs to be ensured with the national law enforcement agencies such as immigration in case of the multinational crew, or in order to identify those suspicious vessels and then move on to the investigation. So to make this MDA-led detection successful, so there are various factors that should be simultaneously strengthened at the policy level, as well as the institutional level and technical sharing mechanism modality level, coupled with the training. First, on the strategic and policy framework, it will be the most important to align these efforts with the existing maritime security work plan of the different regional entities. So senior government officials have met within this framework of these regional initiatives and have agreed already on those work plans based on the common threats and priorities. So for the IORA, there is this working group on the maritime security and safety, and there is a work plan already established from 2021 to 22 to 2026. For the Colombo Security Conclave, which is a more operational regional entity, there is also maritime security and safety pillar, and there is a work plan that is already existing. And then lastly, the BIMSTEC has also established this expert group on the maritime security and safety, so it will be important to align the efforts through these different regional initiatives. On the institutional capacity, while recognizing the difficulties and challenges in addressing those each items, there are the opportunities to to strengthen the institutional capacity, such as by developing the SOPs for the information sharing at the national level, together with the regional bodies, so with the IFC-IOR, RCOC, RMIFC, with the different agreements. Also, we would like to promote to establish the joint task force comprising the other law enforcement agencies such as police, customs, immigration, ports, and fisheries within the national IFCs in order to have a maximum effect in coordinating the maritime law enforcement efforts. And of course, the use of a diverse MDA system using the AI tools with the new technology. Another opportunities on the information sharing mechanism. So we are talking about the data here. And then, of course, this is sensitive. And then there are also human rights issues that are related when we are sharing these information to the others. And for example, in the criminal proceedings, the intelligence itself doesn't have any power, but the information it does. So there is also, it is important to distinguish what is intelligence and what is information. But in general, this is the reason why the countries need the legal agreement in order to share those informations. And I believe that's where we are having lots of difficulties to make our MDA system work. So we could envisage developing the reciprocity agreements or MOUs for the MDA information sharing at the bilateral, but also can be at the regional level, especially like linking into the regional initiatives. But we, at the same time, we also would like to promote the interagency cooperation at the national level through the harmonized standard operating procedure in order to clarify the mandates, duties, and responsibilities of each maritime law enforcement agency in addressing different crime types altogether. And then lastly, all these efforts couldn't be done without the appropriate training. So it is, of course, important to continuously develop and deliver the multi-level capacity building training on the MDA collection and how to fuse the information, how to analyze those information, and how to share these MDA informations. And also, of course, the separate specific program on interagency coordination and the interregional coordination would be also important. And then it is important also to deliver the training on the digital electronic evidence, because that can contribute to the legal finish of the maritime crimes. So like when I say legal finish, this is not only the apprehension of the suspects at sea or just the disposal of the drugs at sea, but up to the prosecution to bring criminals to justice. And on the last point, so just would like to highlight that the MDA serves as a valuable tool for the maritime law enforcement and nations in securing digital evidence to bring the criminals to justice. So by continuously monitoring and collecting data from various maritime sources, including the vessel tracking systems and satellite imageries, the chat log, the MDI provides a digital trail of the maritime activities. And this digital evidence can be critical in investigation and helping the authorities to identify and then track vessels involved in the illegal activities. So let's remember that the MDA not only enhances the situational awareness, but also helps in gathering the real-time and historical information and supporting the effective law enforcement operation and up to the legal judicial proceedings. So ultimately, the MDA contributes to the successful prosecution of the criminals involved in the maritime crime, ensuring greater security and the rule of law in the maritime domain. So that is it for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Siji, for that excellent presentation on the process of maritime domain awareness. As promised, now it's time for Martin Cauchi-Inglet to talk about the Cremario 2 project that the European Union is leading. So we're going to bring up Martin's presentation, and then he'll have time to talk to us.
Good morning, Excellencies, Admirals, Generals, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed an honor and my pleasure to be here presenting the project, the EU project that I lead to this esteemed audience. And I thank the host, the Sri Lanka Navy, for inviting Cremario to this event. And a big thank you also for the wonderful dinner that we had last night, which was such good fun. Cremario, who we are, what we do. So Cremario is a EU-funded project which has benevolent ambitions in mind. It is not a security or defense-oriented project. We are there to support partner governments, enhance maritime safety and security, and address IUU fishing. We're there to support partners enhance their maritime governance, because at the end of the day, if we have safer and more secure trade routes, shipping is safer, trade will flourish, and everyone will win. We are about promoting multilateralism. We cooperate with like-minded countries. We're a facilitator. We work at the operational and the tactical level, and we have a civ-mil approach. What tools have we got in our basket? First of all, we are primarily retired experts, Coast Guard and Navy, from all countries across the Indo-Pacific. So, from Africa we have Kenyans, we have Seychellois. South Asia we have Sri Lankans. Pacific we have got US and Australians with us. So we're a very multinational team. We promote our cooperation through software systems. There is one which I will go into some depth, which is called IORIS, and through another initiative, which is Share It, where we aim to interconnect systems. We obviously have funds which make our life much easier. So, first of all, I want to go into information exchange. We all know why we need to exchange information. That is clear. That's why we're here. We've heard it 1,000 times. The question is how we exchange information, and this is Cremario's forte. We have gained experience over the last 3 years, and we identify 4 challenges. First is the challenge to change the mindsets, change the culture, because you need to build trust and confidence with one another before you decide to exchange information. And therefore, you need to move from a culture of need to know to responsibility to share. The second challenge is then to convince the political level and the military leadership to engage in cooperation in information exchange. And I can say that when I engage with countries, there's a 90% willingness from the political and the senior leadership to engage in cooperation with Cremario and partner countries in information exchange. The challenge is converting that political will into operational implementation. The third challenge is language, because countries have got obviously different languages, sometimes even in the same country. So how do you exchange information if you don't speak the same language? And the fourth challenge is the complexity of shipping, where you have the port states, the flag states, the coastal states, different nationalities, you have ship owners being different, the cargoes, etc., etc. Extremely complex. So with all this in mind, way back in 2018, Cremario 1 developed the IORIS info exchange and operational coordination tool. So to be clear, this is not an EU system. It is a system that the EU developed to support its partners in the Indo-Pacific interoperate with one another. It is very strong on communications and coordination. And permit me to make a very rudimentary example, but just so that you understand the concept. You can compare this to a very sophisticated and secure WhatsApp, where groups are created according to needs. And the needs can be different. They can be cross-sectoral, interagency, cross-regional. Okay, they can be thematic, i.e. fishing, search and rescue, addressing pollution. And you create these groups according to your need. And the person who creates the group, the administrator, decides who is inside the group. So you're not sharing all the information that you have with everyone inside IORIS. Far from it. It is very secured and very grouped into clusters according to needs. It is neutral, it is secure, it's web-based, so you don't need to buy hardware. You log into the system online. And you can see it very much like a C3 system, command, control, communications, and or even a virtual operation center. It does not do surveillance. It does not do data analysis. So for that, tools like Sea Vision or Skylight, which Siji mentioned, are far superior. So we developed this platform because we felt that partners needed a system which they trusted, and they needed to feel that they owned the system. And we have worked towards this governance structure, and I'll touch on it at the end. It's a cost-effective solution because instead of every country, every agency developing its own info exchange system, there's a common system which all can plug into. Now, a system like this costs between 2 and 3 million euros. If there are 90 agencies and they all had to develop their own system, look at the costs being saved. Over and above, it's pointless having a system which cannot communicate with another system. And to interconnect two systems, you need at least $200,000. Now imagine, again, all the agencies having their own systems, and then the cost saved by connecting those systems together if IORIS is used. This is what the one group conversation chat, we call it a community area, looks like. On the left-hand side, you have a map. You can zoom in and zoom out. What is important is that if you zoom in on land, you have the streets and the roads. So the platform is very useful in the littoral if you have humanitarian assistance and disaster relief missions, because you can deal with both land and sea at the same time. We purchase commercial AIS. So it is raw AIS. It is not information which has been analyzed, but it serves as a reference. On the right-hand side, you have got the messaging. Now, what's important is that any language can be used. So you can type in your own language, Arabic, Somali, Swahili, Bahasa, and the recipient will translate it into his own language and send back in his own language, and it's retranslated all inside the system. So the language barrier I mentioned before is gone. It doesn't exist. You have other functionalities, but I'll not go on into them because time is short. So the aim is that you create different clusters according to your needs. And these are the different type of clusters which one could go into. If you look at the top half, they are routine exchange of information. It can be single service. So for example, we have the Philippines Coast Guard, which uses IORIS to interconnect with its coastal stations, the Peruvian Coast Guard as well. It can be interagency. So for example, you have the Kenyan Joint Operations Center, which uses IORIS to interconnect with the different agencies. It can be regional. So you have either countries grouping together, or even in a regional organization. And over here I take the example of the Red Sea, Gulf of Oman, Gulf of Aden. There are the Coast Guards and the maritime authorities together exchanging information. But just imagine you're in a small operations center. You already have many screens, sea vision, marine traffic, whatever. How can you see all this information at once if you have different conversations ongoing, different groups on IORIS? The answer is that you could have one screen and you see the blue boxes, and if you could click from box to box, you are moving from community area to community area. You also see on this map exclusive economic zones, which can be switched on and switched off. You can also see a little fish in the middle, so you can actually plot inside the map, search patterns, pollution flows, etc. I now go into a bit of dark targeting because I was asked to also touch upon this subject. So Cremario/IORIS does not do dark targeting. However, we have partnered with a US not-for-profit organization called ALNI. ALNI operate this system called Skylight. Skylight has the ability to pull information from different satellite services, VIIRS, search aperture radar, AIS, and it combines this data, and through AI, it points out those vessels which could be of a dubious nature. In this particular slide, you can see vessels which are doing transshipments at sea, probably illegally. So why am I mentioning this topic? I'm mentioning this topic because we have partnered with Skylight, and now most of your countries have access to Skylight, which comes free of charge because it addresses IU fishing. And we have imported a layer of Skylight onto IORIS. So now, if you are coordinating operations, you can also see information from Skylight on the IORIS screen. Over here you see red and black boxes, crosses. The red crosses are basically those vessels which have been detected by satellite services but are not emitting AIS. The black boxes are those which are emitting AIS and have been picked up by satellite services. So the black squares are probably more legitimate than the red squares. This is information which you can see on IORIS, but I want to underline that this is a service that has been provided by ALNI into the IORIS system, free of charge, and all your countries probably already have this already. Here's another slide. The next step is now seeing how we can link IORIS with merchant shipping. Whilst you can create those community areas which are government to government, interagency, there is a third tier, which is connecting merchant shipping going through choke points, for example, with coastal centers. And the added value of this is that now you can create community areas where the shipping community can speak to each other and speak to coastal stations. And we have already tested this with the EU Operation Atalanta and the UN World Food Programme ship delivering food aid to Somalia. And it works perfectly well, from ships to shore and shore to ships. It also offers enhanced maritime domain awareness because now ships at sea offer eyes and ears to coastal stations. Again, a culture has to be overcome in exchanging information. It is a long journey, but we have already started on this. And so IORIS can be used for maritime security and maritime safety in the CivMil domain, where, as I mentioned, it can be now used to exchange information concerning piracy, armed robbery, exchanging information on potential terrorist attacks, protecting ports and critical infrastructures, informing company security officers in advance of ships going into perilous regions. It can be used for maritime safety, and I'll come to that next. Vessel traffic monitoring, search and rescue, combating oil pollution, harbor master and port operations. So this is real. It's happening. The French island of Réunion has taken the initiative and has established 2 community areas. One is to deal with interlinking the different maritime rescue coordination centers together. So together they have a common forum where they can show where incidents are happening at sea, and they can coordinate operations together. Think back to the tragic Malaysian Airlines 370 incident. It went somewhere down in the Indo-Pacific. How did the countries, the MRCCs, collaborate back then? It was email, it was probably phone calls, I'm imagining, and then they were all doing their individual plotting. So now through IORIS, you can overcome that because you have common messaging, you have a common plot, everyone who is inside the particular group can see where the different assets are operating in their search missions, so you have a comprehensive approach to doing business. So that's the MRCC cluster in the Western Indian Ocean. We also have another community area which now deals with monitoring vessels carrying hazardous cargoes in the international trade routes between South Africa and the Malacca Straits and in the Mozambique Channel. And over here, once again, you have now got vessel traffic monitoring centers collaborating with each other and exchanging information on vessels which could be carrying hazardous cargoes. Progression of our work. We go in first by providing training. Our training is in different levels. There is basic, foundation, advanced. Then we provide train-the-trainer courses. We provide SOP courses on how to use IORIS. All this training is for free. The EU covers the costs of all this training. And here you can see the countries which have so far received IORIS training and are using IORIS. Very strong in the Western Indian Ocean because that's where we started. Latin America, it's picking up at a very fast speed. The Pacific, we started a process of combined courses last July. We have the next set in November. In Southeast Asia, we have done a lot of work in Philippines, and there are 5 agencies using the system. And Indonesia, we have provided a lot of courses, around 25 courses so far. You will see EU member state flags down there. Why? Because if an EU naval platform goes to the region, we train them on the system, so now they can organize passing exercises with their partners, and worst case scenario, they can even coordinate search and rescue operations or any kind of operations with those countries using the system. Why? Because, as I mentioned, IORIS can be used from onboard ships. You can switch off the map and you have low bandwidth version. So, that is the IORIS system. Our ambition is to get the countries to use the system to exchange information for the common good. But once that's in place, we then go into our capacity building element, and our experts organize exercises based on scenarios that the partners would like to practice. Search and rescue, IU fishing, drug trafficking, they tell us what they want to do. We organize the scenario, we provide some refresher training, we conduct the exercise as director, and then we provide forum for discussion afterwards where lessons are learned, they're exchanged, counterparts get to meet each other. This is all done virtually, all from the comfort of the maritime operation centers of the countries, because IORIS has a mirror version just for exercising. We do this with maritime operation centers, fisheries monitoring centers, but we also do this by supporting navies, organizing exercises with their counterparts. This is an example where the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium last year organized this exercise. India and France were co-hosting, and both the shore station and the vessels at sea used IORIS to interface with one another. Today I'm replacing the command of Al Indian, who unfortunately could not make it to this conference today, so Sri Lanka asked me to step in, and he asked me to, just emphasize the point that IONS will be organized again this year between the 6th and 9th of November in the Seychelles, co-hosted by India and France. And IORIS will once again be the system upon which the exercise will be based. Taking this down to an easier level, you could have, for example, a visiting warship going to a country just for a few days. We will train the warship on the system, and we will organize the exercise for just the morning, and it saves the headache of the ship's crew having to plan and conduct an exercise at short notice. Over here we simulated a drug trafficking case, a ship traveling from Latin America to the Philippines, and we had the French Navy exercising with the Philippines Navy and the Philippines Coast Guard. I mentioned French. 2 weeks ago, we supported Ecuador run a Latin American exercise in which the US Coast Guard participated, and the US Coast Guard also used IORIS to do the exchanges with all the assets at sea around the Galapagos Islands. Governance. I have 4 minutes left, and I'll be able to get through this in good time. The idea is that for IORIS to succeed, we need to make sure that everyone feels that they are a part owner of the system and they need to trust the system. So we had a first meeting last December in the Seychelles, where we brainstormed the idea how to do this. And this led to the first IORIS Governance Steering Committee in Bali last month, where the regional steering committee was established. There are a number of levels with regards to membership of the steering committee. Those countries, agencies, navies which actively use IORIS win more points with Cremario and get more funds to attend more activities, to attend working groups, and to contribute more to the platform. The first sets of working group meetings are happening in Nairobi next month. We have a policy board, an operational working group, legal working group, and technical working group. So your experts can be part of this, can examine the security of the system, can examine policies for taking it forward, and to be part of the overall IORIS community. Very briefly, what happens when there are other systems which are, I wouldn't say in competition to IORIS, but work side by side with IORIS? So Singapore has got its IRIS system, the US has got its Sea Vision system, the Indians are in line for developing their NISHAR system, I believe. How do these systems communicate together? At the moment, they don't. So in partnership with UNODC, we started this initiative to create a translator software, and the different kinds of information exchange systems can now plug into this software. And so users of Sea Vision, IRIS, and whichever system there is out there can decide to choose which information to exchange with others through whatever system they want. So this gives flexibility to better interconnect all the different systems out there together. And to conclude my presentation, I just want to underline that Cremario is about not only IORIS, but promoting cross-sectoral interagency and cross-regional cooperation. Our products are all neutral and zero cost. We have IORIS, which is centralized, Shared, which is decentralized. Once we have the tools being used, we go in with mentoring, advising, and supporting through exercises, and we're also ready to continue supporting partners implement their strategies and work plans. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that presentation on what looks to be a fascinating system in development. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for question and answers. We have 15 minutes to do that, so I will encourage you to use your badge to place it on that magic box at your table to line up for questions. And while you do that, I will warm up the crowd and our two speakers by asking them each a question in turn. So Siji, the first question for you, if I could please. Until recently, maritime surveillance was really the province of the state, right? Only states had the capability and capacity to, in any meaningful manner, collect data at sea, process it, and then use it to effect. But as you and Martin illuminated in your presentations, there are increasing stakeholders and actors in this. States, private companies, IOs, NGOs, non-for-profits, UN agencies have all gotten involved in maritime domain awareness. How is the law going to change, or how does it need to change with the situation that's happening right now with maritime domain awareness? And the same with these institutional or international norms. How do they need to change? Sorry,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first on the, when we involve so more than one state, so like when we talk about two states or at the regional level, since we are talking about the data, it is indeed necessary to have a legal agreement between two member states. So normally an MOU or other forms of agreement is required for the member states to share the information. And then we could also see lots of countries have started signing the MOUs, but also the regional IFCs as well started signing the MOUs with the member states. So I believe that is a very welcomed and then positive initiative. But the one recommendation we would like to give is actually having the regional MOU, so that the countries that would like to share the information, since we have the common threats here. So that would be one of the easiest way of dealing with the problems of the information sharing. And then of course also at the national level, it's not, as I mentioned, it's not only the Navy and then Coast Guard who are responsible of identifying and then sharing the MDA, and then also each entity, department, the ministries, in terms of the data sharing with the other ministries, like it also has a lots of hurdles and then difficulties. So this is also one of the areas that could be strengthened at the interagency level within the country, so that we put the idea and then promote the idea of sharing the information. Thank you.
Great answer, thank you. Martin, quick question for you before we go to the crowd. You gave us a great example of Cremario and IORIS that is bringing technology to developing states and indeed to everyone. Is this the start of technology becoming more accessible and more affordable that will assist us with our MDA challenges? Or the contrary, is it the start of a glut of information and systems that will compete with one another that may make it more confusing for developing states to utilize these systems?
Thanks, Wade, for the very interesting question. The area of information exchange is, as you're all aware, extremely sensitive. Yet Cremario decided to embark on this ambitious endeavor. We decided because, the EU genuinely believes that for seas to be safer and more secure, the countries need to speak to each other. So there are no two ways about it, that to assure for safety and security, there has to be conduits through which, trusted conduits through which information can be exchanged. And the EU is contributing through this effort by having developed the technology. I have to say it was contracted out to a project outside the European Union, which is Cremario. And once the technology was developed, the task is to convince you, the decision makers, or the advisors to the policy makers, the decision makers, to become familiar with the system, to trust the system, to understand the concept, and to try and become part of this great project we're leading. Because together so far we have amassed 55 navies, coast guard and agencies across the Indo-Pacific. Obviously, information does not simply flow all the time. There have to be incidents at sea. There have to be suspicious vessels. Trust and confidence has to be there. But for that to happen, you have to have a network in place. So through Cremario, we're developing the network. Through IORIS, we're offering the technology. And it's up to you, the partners, to make the best of it and to become part of this great endeavor that we have embarked on. Now, It is true that there are many options out there to exchange information. And I'll be blunt. If you don't use IORIS, what are you going to use? Email and WhatsApp. So through IORIS, you have an info exchange system which offers you secure communications plus a common operational picture. But you also have to be selective in which system to use and when. And yes, you should use more than one system because every system comes with its added value. IORIS is not strong in maritime surveillance, is not strong in data analysis. But once you have the information and you need to exchange it with partners and you need to coordinate an operation, then you need a system like IORIS. So this is the value of IORIS. And I can say that most systems out there, when it comes to operational coordination, are not as good as IORIS. And so this is the value that IORIS brings. Skylight, Sea Vision, other systems, they all have their very good strengths, which IORIS does not have, to be frank. So it's important that the operators learn the differences in the systems. And I can say from my side, I did my best. We did our best to make IORIS compatible with Sea Vision so that partners don't see both platforms as competing with one another. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Both of those answers, I hope, are illuminating the new world that confronts us here with maritime domain awareness. We have our first question from the crowd. Swadikap, Admiral Tongsard from Thailand. Could we get a microphone here in the middle for the Admiral, please?
Yes, my name is Admiral Chachai Tongsard, Commander-in-Chief, Royal Thai Fleet. My first question is asking Ms. Siji Song. Okay. As we know that in Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia and Pacific, we have several information fusion centers, for example, in India, in Singapore, and Sri Lanka. Okay. Do you have any information that much those information fusion centers exchange their information and share information to other center? This is my first question. My second question is asking Mr. Ingot that as we know that each center had their own system and software, something like that. Okay. Do you have the recommend of how to increase the cooperation among those centers by using their own system as present, but they increase the know-how, training, or SOP by using their own system? Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral, for those questions. First to Siji.
Yeah, thank you, Admiral, for the question. Yes, the question was like how much the IFCs share the informations. So we, the UNODC, yes, we have conducted some assessments at the IFC IOR, and then first try to understand how the IFC IORs, regional IFCs, sorry, not IFC IORs, the regional IFCs share the information at the regional level. So with the other IFCs, such as in the Singapore, India, RMIFC, RCOC, or even further to the Yaoundé Architecture du Gulf of Guinea. And then the other layers, so more at the national level, so how does the regional IFCs share the information with the national IFCs? At the regional level, from what we understand, there is definitely a communication between, so for the Indian Ocean, the RCOC, RMIFC with the IFC IOR and with the Singapore. They are aware of the focal points, who to contact, and they do provide the information. But I believe we have Indian representatives here, and then I believe also the representative from the IFC-IOR. I think they are better suited to respond to this question. But also from my understanding, there are the liaison officers who are within the IFCs, so that will also further facilitate the information exchanges. And then before Vice Admiral speaks, I just would like to add that there also has been increased level of assigning the MOU, so with the countries, for example, the IFC-IOR signing the India signing the MOUs with the other countries, but also, for example, IFC-IOR, India signing the MOU with the RCOC. So there are definitely more and more cooperation that are expected in terms of information sharing, but also from what I heard that the more and more cooperation for the maritime exercise operations that are also being expected. Over to you, Admiral.
Yeah, Admiral Sabti, can we go to you first, and then we'll go to Martin to answer the second part of the question.
So I just want to kind of add to the answer that Ms. Siji gave. The IFC-IOR, which is based in India, and say the RCOC, which is based in Singapore, what we are doing is that at least India has got a liaison officer positioned at the RCOC. Similarly, we have an officer from Singapore who is based in the IFC-IOR. I'm not very sure whether he's here just now. Oh, he's there, very much. And these become the points of contact. So the Indian liaison officer feeds information to the IFC-IOR from the RCOC, and I'm sure our Singaporean ILO also is feeding information, who's resident in IFC-IOR, is feeding information to the RCOC. That is how the regional information fusion centers are cooperating amongst each other. This is just one example.
Thank you, Admiral Sabti. Let's go to Martin now to answer the second part of Admiral Tongsart's question.
Thank you very much. Building on your point, sir. I mentioned Share It. So Share It, I mentioned, is a system to interconnect the different systems. But it's more than that. It's also a community. And we first organized the first meeting for information fusion centers in Paris in April 1 year ago. January of this year with the UNODC in Bangkok, we organized the second Share It meeting, and the third Share It meeting will be held again in Bangkok in the premises of the UN and in partnership with UNODC. Now, who is in this Share It community at the moment? When we started off with fusion centers only. And so we had the RMIFC, which is based in Madagascar. We had IFC-IOR from day one, but participating as observers, not full members yet. We had Singapore Fusion Center. We have the Pacific Fusion Center, which is cooperating as an observer. The Latin American Fusion Center, which is a full member. And we have the ICC Center in the Gulf of Guinea, which is participating as an observer. So these are the IFCs which have come together to make a pathway forward for information sharing in the future. And the idea is that, like I said, they interconnect through a common technology. The next step is that we expand now to countries, and we invited 13 countries to join this Share It initiative, and 6 of these countries are Asian countries, and 7 of these countries are countries which have interests in the Pacific. And all these have been invited to the next Share It meeting in November in Bangkok. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our Q&A time, and I have been threatened with no lunch if I exceed my time for this panel. So for those of you who keyed in, thank you. We'll have to take your questions on the break. It's now time for me to thank the Ministry of Defense, the Navy Command, and all of the organizers of this incredible event for giving us the opportunity, all of us, to be here and to share information with one another, and for us to participate. Finally, I'd like to thank my two brilliant panelists who have illuminated the issue of maritime domain awareness for all of us, and thank them very much for their participation here. And so with this, we'll close out panel number 4. I'll turn it out over to the organizers who will do the final talk before we go to lunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for moderating this session and the two speakers for presenting their papers. Ladies and gentlemen, may I take this opportunity to invite the Commander Eastern Naval Area of Sri Lanka Navy, Rear Admiral Suresh De Silva, to hand over mementos to the moderator and the two speakers, please. Mr. Wade David Turvold, please accept this memento. Mrs. Siji Song. Mr. Martin Kaushi Inglot.